Thank you. Item 7. Item 7 is the review of the education transport policy. Before we consider this report, we will hear a petition from Amy Caldwell, who is a local resident who is calling on council to review the current Item 7 is a review of the education transport policy. Item 7, hopefully, is a review of the education transport policy. Before we consider this report, we will hear a petition from Amy Caldwell, a local resident, calling on the council to review the current school transport provision from Great Gransden to Comberton Village College. Councillor Stephen Ferguson, the local member for Great Gransden, will then address the committee in relation to this petition. Welcome, Amy. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am representing parents of children who currently attend our catchment school, Comberton Village College, and who live in Great Gransden and surrounding villages. Currently, we have to fund our children's transport to and from school as there is no free bus provision at all. The cost is £300 per term, and we are set to incur a further rise of 10% going forwards, taking this to a staggering £1,000 per child per year. We as parents are really struggling with this affordability. We deem this unfair and unequal, as not only do the majority of children from our villages attend Comberton, but Barnabas Oley, which is the village feeder primary, also have strong cultural and historical links with Comberton, meaning that teachers travel from Comberton to teach and to get to know the pupils before their transition. We are asking for a review because we feel the transport provision has not been reviewed in recent years. And since it was last carried out, there are now no children attending Long Sands, but yet no transport provision has been re-established. This is putting a huge strain on us families, because not only are we having to find the money in these difficult economic times, there are some larger families who have been forced to buy other vehicles and commit their working daytime to drive their children to and from school, purely because funding the bus is unaffordable. This not only has huge environmental impact in terms of emissions and congestion and wear to roads, but also has a child safety impact, as Comberton is not designed for multi-car drop-offs and collections due to the rural nature of the school. It was built with the vision that pupils would either attend on foot or by bus. We feel that by not providing any provision that we are being penalised and that it is unfair and unequal for all, especially as there are villages further away, for example, Gamlingay, that are provided with funded transport, which makes us even more inconsistent and without any logic or transparency. Every child of school age should be provided with free bus transport if they are not able to walk. So we call upon the council to do the right thing, to create fairness and equality for all, and to review the lack of provision. I would also like to add that since putting this petition forward, that it has come to light that there are now council-provided school buses which run through our villages every morning without stopping, which adds to the complete obscure nature of this whole situation. We would like to know why these buses are taking low numbers of children from our village, which have capacity, which have not already been considered for, and why the council are running these buses firstly without filling them, and secondly not offering them to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members of the committee have any questions for Amy about her petition? Councillor Bradnam, please.
Thank you very much for coming to speak to us today, Amy. And I, in fact, saw the article in the Cambridge News this morning as well, in which your plight was illustrated. I just wanted to ask, I had a look at the map, and it seems to me that Gamlingay is further away than Great Gransden from Comberton Village College. Forgive me if you don't know, but do you know why, for what reason Gamlingay, which would appear to be further out of catchment of Comberton, has been provided with school transport?
Yeah, so there's been some historical connection between the schools, and that's why an agreement was struck. But it just adds fuel to the fire because, you know, we are in effect closer, and we have no provision at all.
So is it those coaches that are going from Gamlingay that are going through Great Gransden that you feel aggrieved about?
So there are other buses that run through our village but don't stop. One of them is Caldicot. There's also one from Caxton, which has a 13-minute window to get from Caxton to Longstow, then to Bourne, and then on to Comberton. Actually comes through our village. It's a double-decker bus and does not pick any of our children up.
Sorry, but is that a standard service bus, a stagecoach
it's
bus?
It's a school run,
than
but it's a council provided bus. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands, in which case we will now hear from Councillor Stephen Ferguson, the local member for Great Gransden. Councillor Ferguson, you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I fundamentally believe in the principle of free education, and that if a child cannot walk to a catchment school, then the county council has a responsibility and an obligation to bus them to it. We live in a rural county. There are 276 villages in Cambridgeshire. Most do not have their own secondary school. So the vast majority rely on council-funded buses to transport pupils from rural locations to the catchment school. In 272 of those 276 villages, we do that for free. Either the child walks to school or it gets bused. 4 villages are unfairly excluded from our school transport provision. Parents from the villages of Abbottsley, Worsley, and the Gransdens are as you just heard, forced to pay about £1,000 per year to put their children on the school bus to Comberton, which is a catchment school, which in many cases is the same school bus that picks up children from other villages for free on its way to the same school. If you read the current home to school travel assistance policy, it says quite clearly, it was agreed in 2016. It says clearly, the council will provide free transport for a child if he or she is registered at the school designated by the council and is not within the statutory walking distance of the young person's home. Your designated school is your catchment school and or the closest school to the child's address. If your catchment school is not the closest school, either school will qualify as a designated school. So you can see from that quite clear statement that these villages should be, according to the wording of the policy, which we've all agreed, should be included in the free school transportation scheme. However, despite meeting these criteria, the villages have been unfairly excluded from the free school transportation policy. And you can check this yourself. If you go onto the website, type in an address in Abbottsley or Gransden, you'll see that the 2 schools that come up as catchment schools are Long Sands and Comberton. Since Amy has been making a fuss about this in August, the website has changed, and there used to be no extra statement, but now it says for transportation purposes, the local authority does not include Abbottsley, Great Gransden, Little Gransden, Worsley, or Everton Heath, which is in Bedfordshire. And I think this is the only school in the whole county for which these kind of caveats are used. This is not a matter of parental choice. You've just heard that Comberton is a catchment school for these villages. Every primary school age child in the village goes to St Barnabas Olney, and that's a feeder school for Comberton. So eventually all of the pupils in this village end up at Comberton. Despite the fact that it's been named as a catchment school, no children from the villages attend Long Sands. And I can imagine the start of this was when, you know, when this came in, these villages came into the Comberton catchment area, County Council didn't want to put on a bus to Long Sands and to Comberton. But since we no longer put on a bus to Comberton or Long Sands, it seems a really unfair exclusion to me. This means that the secondary school transportation spend for the villages that I represent is essentially zero. If these parents decided to send their children to Longstand instead of Comberton, we'd be forced to put up a bus for them. It's also not a matter of distance, as you heard. Gamlingay is further away, has 4 schools nearer than Comberton, and yet we bus children in from Gamlingay for free. My view is the current school transportation policy does not does not fairly exclude these villages from school transportation. The issue is today, Chair, is that before you have a revised school transportation policy that you're being asked to approve. This new policy suddenly includes two caveats under the notes of section 2.7 of Appendix 4 that are apparently intended to formalise the exclusion of these 4 villages, and only these 4 villages, from free school transportation. Through you, Chair, I'd like to ask the committee to think carefully about approving a policy that would formalise the exclusion of the villages that I represent from free school transportation, which is enjoyed by everybody else in the county. And while I understand that the school transportation budget is under extreme pressure, it seems fundamentally unfair to me that taxpayers in the rural communities that I represent are effectively subsidising school transportation for everybody else in the county without being able to access it for their own children. And I think that in the midst of a cost of living crisis, it's fundamentally unfair to force parents to spend thousands of pounds and sometimes multiple thousands of pounds to take their children to access secondary school education. So I'd ask you, Chair, and through you to the committee, could you please put an end to this unfair exclusion of my residents? Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members of the committee have any questions for Councillor Ferguson? Councillor Bradnam, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ferguson, could you remind us which paragraph you were referring to and in which policy?
So it's the mainstream transportation policy. It's Appendix 4 of that item, and it's section 2.7. There's 3 notes, and to my reading, the first 2 notes are deliberately intended to exclude these villages from free school transportation, and those caveats weren't present in the previous 2016 policy, which is in action now.
Just clarify, is that the section under the heading nearest suitable school?
Yes, I think so, yes. Yeah, there's 3 notes under that section.
Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure whether Councillor Ferguson can clarify it, although you have said that the Long Sands, I was always led to believe Long Sands was catchment for local authority. I don't know whether we can get some clarification on that, because I'm a bit confused, where we're saying that we've got 2 schools, 2 senior schools within catchment. I'm really a bit confused about that.
So yes, if you go to the County Council website, it lists both schools as catchment schools. Since August last year, when parents started complaining, a caveat appears on the website which says that those schools, those villages are not eligible for free school transportation to Comberton, but that didn't exist before August last year and for all time before that as well. So if you read the wording of the 2016 policy, there is no exclusion based on it. It basically says if you have a place at a catchment school, you can have free transportation as long as you're not within walking distance. That's the very clear criteria, and this seems to have changed in the policy you're about to review.
Any further questions for Councillor Ferguson, please? Councillor Slatter.
I think this might have been a question for Amy, but it does sound as if you can always mutter. The money being paid out by parents, is this for an actual bus contract, and it behaves according to the school ones that we have? And yet there are other buses going through empty. Are we saying that you can't buy a seat on a school bus at all, even if you were to perhaps get a pass, pay part of the cost? I'm just wondering, because clearly there are a lot of issues here, and that particular bus happens to be taking that route, and they might not be expected to, if you just went A to B, but it's obviously going A, B, C, D, E, F, and then if you could explain just what you do now and what you think would make a sensible adaptation, just out of interest, please.
Chair, would you indulge us in letting Mrs. Corwell answer that question? Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, there are other buses that go through that are council funded, but the one we pay for is organised by Competent. It's just a contract. It's actually a really nice coach. It's not even a bus. It's lovely, hence the cost. So there are other buses that I feel that we could, jump on that are running at low capacity, double-decker ones that go right through. But I don't see why we couldn't have a seat on those.
It reminds me strongly of the question we had to full council from the young mother in Melbourne, I think it was, who was unable to buy a ticket for her sons because the bus was going to a different place, and yet they could have used it. I'm just seeking whether there's any common sense way in which we can tweak the system now. Clearly, what we need are better buses throughout the day for anybody who wants to use them, because even if we did extend this, it's still only for the beginning and the end of the school day. And once they're a secondary, we want our young people to be able to extend their education, and some will need to go before the time. So I'm just throwing that in because it clearly is a nonsense. It does us reputational damage, I think, if we can't be flexible. And I would need some enlightenment from the office as to whether we'd be actually acting illegally to sort of sell seats on that bus.
Thank you. If there's no other, Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you. It's just occurring to me, because I remember thinking about a planning application near Competent Village College, and it related to coach parking. And it occurs to me that part of the reason we had difficulty with this at district council level was because Competent is named Competent, but it's actually just outside the parish boundary. The Competent Village College sits just on or outside the boundary of Competent parish, and it actually sits in the other parish. And is that why this is happening? Is it because of the precise location of the college relative to the, because I'm just wondering, is that why the catchment area has been defined in this way? Maybe one of our officers might be able to explain. It's a question perhaps I'll ask the officers.
Yeah, this isn't a question for Councillor Ferguson. Any other questions for Councillor Ferguson, please? No. Thank you both for coming to the meeting today, and Amy, thank you for your clear articulation of the reasons why you and other families living in Great Gransden have submitted this petition calling on the council to formally review the existing transport arrangements to Competent Village College. I think it would be helpful firstly to explain the council's duties in respect of home to school transport and clarify how these relate to families living in Great Gransden. Cambridgeshire County Council has a statutory duty to provide free transport for all secondary age pupils 11 to 16 attending their nearest suitable school if that school is beyond 3 miles from their home address. The Council's home to school travel assistance policy defines the nearest suitable school as a pupil's catchment or nearest secondary school. The Council's defined catchment areas are designed to ensure access to a local school place whilst also ensuring the viability of schools. In the context of Great Gransden and the other villages served by Barnabas Ole Primary School, including Little Gransden, Abbottsley and Worsley, the designated catchment school is Long Sands Academy in St Neots, and the nearest secondary school for the majority of addresses is Competent Village College. During January and February of 2014, the governing body of Competent Village College, as part of their annual consultation for school admission arrangements, also consulted on the expansion of their catchment area to include the area served by Barnabas Ole Primary School with effect from September 2015. Any school who are their own admissions authority, such as Competent Village College, can seek to change or expand their catchment area for the purposes of admitting pupils to that school. This process, however, does not determine a change to the provision of home to school transport for which the County Council is responsible. At the time of consultation, all parties, including the governing body of Barnabas Ole Primary School were informed that whilst consideration would be given to the travel arrangements, there would be no guarantee or automatic entitlement for Comberton to be recognised by the council as the catchment school for that area, as there remained an existing catchment in this area for Longsands Academy and St Neots. After full consideration by senior officers, the council confirmed to both Comberton Village College and the governing body of Barnabas Ole Church of England Primary School that the college's extended catchment area would not be recognised for home to school transport purposes, and the designation of Longsands Academy would remain. Since then, to ensure that families are able to make informed decisions when making their secondary school preferences, the school admission publications have clearly confirmed that the revised catchment area is not supported by the council for the purposes of home to school transport. As a part of the school admissions process, families are advised to consult all the information available regarding school catchment areas and consider how their school choices impact eligibility for other services such as home to school transport. This information includes the online school directory where admissions arrangements for each school, including Comberton Village College, are published. With an increasing number of secondary schools converting to academy status and becoming their own admissions authority, it was recognised that a formal member process should be adopted for determining whether the council should accept responsibility for the provision of free transport as a result of decisions taken by the own admission authority schools to change their catchment areas. In March 2015, the Children and Young People Committee gave its approval to the adoption of a process delegating responsibility for decisions on transport entitlement in such circumstances to the chair and vice chair of the committee in liaison with the local members. In 2017, following representations from families living in Great Gransden, the chair and vice chair of the committee reconsidered the decision regarding home to school transport arrangements to Comberton Village College. As part of that process, all representations received were considered, including views from local members in accordance with the adopted process outlined above. The decision taken reaffirmed the existing position to not provide free home to school transport for pupils living in the area served by Barnabas Ole to Comberton Village College. As a part of this process, consideration was given to the comparison being drawn between those families living in Great Gransden and those living in Gamlingay, where it was agreed in 2016 via the above member process to acknowledge Comberton Village College as their catchment school for transport purposes. It was considered that the decision taken to recognise Comberton Village College for transport purposes for children living in the Gamlingay area was not directly comparable. As Gamlingay had previously been part of a three-tier education system with transfer links to Stratton Upper School in Biggleswade, Bedfordshire, those children did not have an existing secondary catchment school in Cambridgeshire, unlike the children and young people living in the Barnabas Ole catchment area. I appreciate the views and concerns raised of those parents and carers of children living in Great Gransden and those expressed by Councillor Ferguson. I'm also aware that there's been a long-standing trend of parental preference for children and young people to attend Comberton Village College, predating the college's catchment area change in 2015. It is also clear that this pattern of preference was a significant factor in the college's decision to extend its own catchment area in 2015. Whilst it is clear that the majority of families living within the area served by Barnabas Ole Primary School now choose for their children to attend Comberton Village College, there still remains a number of families whose children attend and receive transport assistance to Longsands Academy. Families are entitled to express any school preference for their child, but it would be neither fair nor equitable of the council to fund transport in these circumstances where there are similar patterns of parental preference replicated across the county where transport assistance is not provided. I recognise and sympathise with the concerns raised regarding the cost of the current transport arrangements from Great Gransden to Comberton Village College. However, I'm also aware that these arrangements are operated directly by the college. It should also be recognised, however, that the families will have been aware of their responsibility to make or fund their child's transport and arrangements when applying for a place at the college. I have noted the feedback regarding there being no provision within the travel assistance policy for this type of catchment area scenario, and I'm aware that this has been included within the revised policy framework being presented today. It is the view of the chair and the vice chair of this committee that the decision in respect to the home to school transport arrangements to Comberton Village College has been fairly and appropriately considered, and there are currently no grounds to undertake a further review of this decision. That will also be sent as a written response, but Councillor Atkins would like to add.
Just to clarify for members of the committee, and just to be correct for the record, In the context of Great Gransden and the other villages and the 4 villages that we've talked about, the designated catchment school is Long Sands Academy, and the nearest secondary school for the majority of addresses is Camborne Village College, not Comberton Village College. It's only because I'm a local member for half of them that I spot the difference. I don't think we're going to take questions.
I'm not sure we're going to take any questions on this.
It was purely a request that we should also be sent the transcript of what you've just read out.
Absolutely, it will be included with the minutes of the meeting. Thank you for attending today, both Amy Caldwell and Councillor Ferguson. Thank you. If we can now move to item 7, which is the education transport policy. Stephanie Miller, who is our policy and operations manager for education transport, is here with us along with Fran and John. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So on the 29th of November 2022, we presented to this committee the challenges we face around homeschool transport. We've seen significant challenges around demand, inflation, COVID and market forces. In that document, as part of our transport strategy, we proposed a number of areas review, including outlining and considering all aspects of our transport policy. It was noted in the January committee that you were minded of the pressure on our homeschool transport budget, and we ended the year with over £3 million overspend for our overall transport obligations. The paper we presented today, much like the previous report, is split into 2 sections. The first updates our policies we operate for the county. These are covered in section 3 of the report. They are mainly driven by statutory requirements, and we are not proposing to make material changes to these. We have instead tidied up some of the policies, made them more accessible, and it's our intention to improve the information we provide to parents to enable them to access and understand their entitlement under transport. The second part of the paper outlines the discretionary spend that this council operates within transport. Many of the decisions were made many years ago in a very different context, and we agreed in the November paper that officers would bring these back to the committee. The discretionary areas that we outline, which are transport for children aged 8 to 11, post-16 SEND transport, and SEND transport for children in early year settings, and they would be debated and considered as part of that. As officers, we've looked into the context of other local authorities, what discretionary transport is offered, and in all 3 of these areas we are an outlier. So in the paper, we've made a recommendation that if you wish to proceed with considering these areas, we would go to consultation, as we have done with other areas of this activity, and obviously, you know, that would be then form part of the committee's response in our June meeting. So as the paper's presented 2 sections, it's for the committee to decide how you wish to progress these recommendations made by officers. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm well aware that we asked for this information regarding these discretionary transport exceptions. As we can see from this report, the financial savings from these are incredibly small when you compare to the many millions that we spend on transport. I personally feel that the impact of removing these would be huge, not least in detriment to the children involved. Unless anyone on the committee would like to debate A to C, I'm quite happy to take a unanimous no on this. But if people wish to discuss, I'm seeing nodding heads. Is that brilliant? So I think, thank you very much for looking into where we're spending over and above. But I think the feeling of the committee is to carry on spending over and above in this relatively small amount compared to the rest of the budget. In which case, let's move to recommendation D and discuss that part of the report. Anyone wishing to say anything or questions? Councillor Bradnam, please.
I think it might be worth our while saying thank you very much for producing such a comprehensive report on the implications of A, B and C, which we did ask you for. It's been a very illuminating exercise, and I think it's fair to say that perhaps maybe none of us realise just how complex it is, and I would like to ask that in future, when we get that sort of request coming, or, we might be asking for this, but if you recognise that something is very complicated, I'd like to ask that we get a full briefing as members before it comes to committee, because we might have had some view about that before the item came to committee, and we've put you to a great deal of work, which we appreciate, but a briefing prior might have been very useful. Thank you very much, Chair.
Just to add above and beyond that, I have asked for training on this as well, because it's such a complex area. So hopefully we can do that going forward as well. Councillor Maguire, please.
Chairman, thank you. It was a comment or a request I was going to make of Jonathan before you introduced your bit. It was kind of took me a wee bit by surprise. That's all right. No, I was just saying, but during your introduction, you made reference to has been in a very different context now. I think even the current policy probably even precedes my time on this council, which is a long time, as you know. But I'm always worried when people make comments like very different context, because I'm not quite sure why the context is different today than it was then. It was equally dealt with because we thought it was fair to reduce these particular distances and the other concessions that we made. And as I say, so what I'm actually saying, Chairman, through you, is please be careful when you use that expression in very different context without telling us how the context has changed, because I cannot personally, in this case, see the context as having changed. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. Perhaps I could clarify why I made that statement. I think particularly in relation to B&T around special education needs, we've seen exceptional change in numbers, needs, demands coming through, and at the time this was agreed, I think the requirements were very different. I think the implication on children remains the same, but actually, having over 7,000 education, health and care plans now compared to maybe going back to 2014, where we had about 2,500 children with statements of special education needs, is quite a different context. However, obviously in the context of the right thing to do, the discretion you operate, I can see where you've made that statement, but to be really clear, that's what I was referring to. We have a different quantum now associated with these areas. Probably I would agree with you. I'm not sure anything's changed. 3 miles is still 3 miles, as was 2 miles at the same time. But certainly in relation to SEN, we've seen, as the committee is aware, a significant shift in needs particularly, but also numbers.
Thanks for that, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Atkins, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just, this is a very boring good governance point, but the policy as written includes, I believe, the above and beyond items that we've now discounted. So when we're looking at recommendation D, can I suggest that we remove the last clause of that says with the exception of the proposed amendments listed above, just so it's clear that we are, if we vote to agree recommendation D, we are agreeing the entirety of the policy, including the so-called above and beyonds. Is that correct? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bullock, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have had a question around the more active travel routes, especially around walking, because we know there's so many routes that are just not safe to be walkable routes, especially with poor pavements or no pavements or poor lighting. And I'm sure some of this work is already taking place, but I think maybe members of this committee would benefit from perhaps maybe a briefing or a discussion around the work that we can do more in collaboration with highways, the combined authority, and other relevant bodies, because I think there's a lot of discussion to be had in how can walking routes be improved, and especially around pavements or the lack of pavements and street lighting. Those are two very important topics in the context of actually encouraging more children to walk to school. So like I would welcome a review in a way of this safer walking routes in conjunction with highways and combined authority and other relevant bodies. So I was wondering if you had any views on that, whether that would be appropriate for a briefing or perhaps a later on discussion in this committee or with highways as a joint discussion. Thank you.
think in the report we've made reference to safer walking routes. I think there are positive aspects to that, active travel elements, but we need to consider the safety too of our children, young people accessing schools. So our intention would be to bring back a similar paper to you to be really clear on these are the current routes that you are considered under the safe access and walking routes, but probably some suggestions about how we may improve and certainly investment. And that may not just purely be pavements. It may be, can we buy bicycles? Are there other more modern routes of access into education? So we'd be very happy to bring back a more detailed paper on that. I think a bit like you've considered around the discretionary areas of home to school transport, for you to be really clear on what you are agreeing that is exception from policy would be good, but also how the policy might help the transport budget and how using active travel could save money, but also create better outcomes for young people. So very happy that we bring that report back. We'll aim to do that in June if that's possible.
Councillor Daunton, please.
Well, Councillor Bewlett has preempted part of my question. My division is a rural division, and I want to encourage communication between different departments in the council, particularly between highways and education, on walking and cycling routes. I think a lot more could be done with better coordination. But my question really is, and apologies if I've missed this, how regularly is the transport policy reviewed?
So as you would expect, officers review annually. We have an obligation to bring it back for formal review if we're seeking to make material changes. I think the policy suite that we presented today, whilst there's no material change to the eligibility, because we're opting to split it into policies that will help parents better navigate the policy system, we felt it appropriate to bring it to committee just to reset the fact that we're moving into a new number of policies. We really hope, and we've listened a lot to parents that we're working with, as well as considering what types of requests we get for exceptional transport. And what's been really clear to us as officers is the current policy wasn't fit for purpose around its explanation of the policy areas of eligibility. So that's why we've primarily brought this back today. We hope there'll be huge betterment for families. We want to work with Pinpoint as an organisation to see how we take these policies now and turn them into really easy read, navigatable pieces of documentation that parents will really understand. Am I eligible? Am I not? What is my options for application for exceptional needs transport?
Okay. Can I just follow that up if you don't mind? So I can understand the sort of policy, but the local or rather the temporary implications. So, for example, in relation to Councillor Maguire's question, you mentioned the increase in SEND, in the provision for SEND, but surely one of the temporary implications is the increasing cost of transport and also the shortage of drivers. And surely that, even if it's only temporary, surely that affects the policy, the implication or the implementation of the policy.
It does. It shouldn't affect the policy eligibility. You're eligible, and parents can be eligible, children can be eligible regardless of how much it costs the local authority and regardless of what options there are out there. We have statutory duty to provide where families are eligible, but absolutely this sits as part of a much wider strategy, and the strategy that we brought to you in November, and Steph's team are leading on the engagement with families, the delivery of the policy, the governance around that, and making sure that we have really good data to work with our providers around how we can deliver more sustainable travel. And that links back to the previous point around sustainable travel. So it's part of a jigsaw. It's a really important part of a jigsaw, but it's one of the fundamentals that we need to get right and then work from to make sure that we have an improved offer for families going forward.
Thank you. I did meet with the Chair and Vice Chair of Highways and Transport and mentioned this earlier on today, and they're very keen to discuss with you the active travel and, you know, certainly buying bikes for children to get to school. I think it's a great way of re-looking at what we provide going forward. Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you for this paper. Just to look at it from a new community point of view, so we at March last year, we okayed the post-16 sixth form college to open at Northstowe, and currently Camborne is on hold. So post-16, Northstowe is going to be the first sixth form around catchment area, and I think it would, personally, I think it will go as far as East Cambs as well, is going to apply to quite a big catchment area for us. So so one of the things for me is ensuring that traffic on site is working and we have a good transport strategy in place. Currently, we are suffering from traffic on site for the mere fact that as a new community, we don't have, well, we do have a lot of children from catchment, but we are having to get people from out of catchment to build the numbers. So as they go through the school, we were thinking, oh, fantastic, you know, we'll have more local, not as much traffic. But actually thinking about it, the sixth form is going to bring that back up for us again. So it's really important that there is bus passes, and luckily we do have the busway next to us, which is really important and a very quick way for the kids to get to school. But just to touch on the cycling, we are suffering from parents currently parking on cycle lanes, which we're trying to deal with at the moment, and that's something the planning team are looking at. How do we do that? Do we put barriers up? Is something we're trying to get Homes England to fund. And also there isn't enough cycling parking available for anyone traveling. So if you think about bikes, can we think about where they're going to park them? It's really important. And yeah, and maybe provide some kind of facilities for the kids to learn how to mend their bikes as well. So really big things for us locally there.
And as said, this feeds into our wider engagement strategy, not only with families, but with schools around how they manage and mitigate those who are and aren't eligible and what the implications of that might be. And you've given an example there. We don't have any authority around, you know, parents that are choosing to park outside of a school, but we can work with schools on their travel plans and consider how they might promote active and sustainable travel where possible. And the other point to raise is we are working closely with the combined authority in their reconsideration of, you know, routes and the public bus network to make sure that our post-16 establishments, as well as our rural secondary schools that aren't well fed by the public bus network at the moment, how can we pick those up better, and how can we improve things in terms of normal travel? The last thing I think both parents and us as a local authority and generally communities from a sustainable perspective want to do is put on more and more taxis and more minibuses. You know, not only from a financial perspective, that is unsustainable as referenced in the budget pressures that we have, but also from a sustainability point of view and a localism point of view. So we are working closely with partners to work that through, and it's looking really optimistic.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, obviously there's going to be learnings for Waterbeach, Darwin Green, maybe Alconbury as well, but I think we've had the conversation that there isn't a sixth form would be available here, but still there's that learning of how we do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bradnam, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to check, were we going to go on to talk about D later, or can I make a point about that now? Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that the paragraph 2.18, where we're saying children in care and care leavers. Sorry, I say this as the chair of the corporate parenting subcommittee. So children in care and care leavers aged between 16 and 19 attending and living more than 3 miles from their nearest appropriate NAC school remain eligible for free travel assistance as part of the council's corporate parent support arrangements, and I'm much relieved about that. I just wanted to check, what are the implications for the post-16 children? And I may have missed it in the, I think there was reference to it under the post-16, but I just wanted to clarify. So in other words, we're not proposing any changes, are we, to the provision for children in care? It's just those children who might be in education after 19, and also provision for children who are in our care up to age 25, where as corporate parents we look after children to 25. I just wanted to check what the circumstances are for them, please.
Yes, just to clarify, there was no implications to remove free travel assistance for children in care, no.
Any changes in the policy are to make it more accessible and readable and easier to understand. Is that correct? Thank you.
I think it's 2.18. It says children in care and care leavers aged 6 to 19 attending and living more than 3 miles from their NAC remain eligible for travel assistance. So I think that covers.
As I just read out. Thank you. But I did ask about post-19 and I just wondered what the search, is there any help for children who are going to college?
So yeah, no proposed changes, Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Maguire.
Chairman, I'm seeking clarification from yourself in regard to the and following the amendment that the Vice Chair suggested in terms of A, B, and C. And when you proposed that we take out A, B, and C, and you made the comment about the small amount of money that we were talking about it as being possibly removing that from that it was insignificant. So if I was to support D, I am actually going along with yourself that we should not be changing the eligibility for those, including those who are outside of the normal 2 miles type thing. Am I understanding it right? Are you? Because what I don't want to do is vote for something in favour of something which actually takes away some of the what we offer to parents of children outside. Do you understand why I'm getting slightly confused?
Not quite. I think what we did is agree that we didn't want to bring in a consultation for A, B, and C. So we've said no to consulting on those, and we're now discussing D. I'm not quite sure what your question is.
Well, within the item, as I understand it, that concession we make to 8 to 11-year-olds, we're talking about withdrawing that. Therefore, if we support D, we're effectively taking that. No,
because what we said is we didn't want to consult on withdrawing the 8 to 11-year-olds. So we didn't want to vote for A, B, and C by consensus of the committee. So there was no point in discussing whether or not we were consulting on those. So no, we won't be consulting on or withdrawing the 8 to 11.
And we're not even proposing in this committee to withdraw that.
We agreed by consensus that we wouldn't know.
Okay, that's all right. I think I'm getting
Sorry, perhaps, Councillor Maguire, perhaps, I think it might help to understand that the policy as written includes all of those above and beyonds that we want to keep in as a committee. So by supporting recommendation D, we're agreeing to continue with, for example, the additional assistance between the ages of 8 and 11. Does that help?
It's the important thing. That's what I'm trying to establish.
Thank you very much.
What he said. In which case, if we have no further question or comment, we're asked to comment on and agree the adoption of the revised travel assistant policies and governance arrangements, including the new home to school travel assistance policy for children in care. All those in favour, please. Andrew, you are eligible to vote on this item. Thank you. And I think, yeah, I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Apologies for the confusion, which was mine, probably. The final report on today's agenda is item 8, the Children and Young People Committee's agenda plan, training plan, committee appointments and school governor nominations and appointments. Would the Democratic Services Officer please let us know of any changes to the published agenda plan?
No changes, Chair.
Do we have any comments on the agenda plan? Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you. As mentioned earlier, I do think it might be helpful that when we know we're coming up against something that's likely to be confusing, I suggest finance, or indeed, in June, we've got some issues about special educational needs and disabilities transformation programme. I don't know how complicated these are, but if you and the Vice Chair and officers feel that a briefing might be useful, I think it would be very helpful so that members are in a position to make informed decisions. to have a briefing and some training beforehand. Thank you.
Thank you. It is noted. We have previously done safety valve training, but I'm really aware it's a really complicated and complex issue. So thank you. Obviously that's also leads on to the training plan. Members happy to take the training plan as noted with the additions we've just discussed today. Councillor Slatter.
Yes, this is something I have raised in the member development group. I think it's a common experience of councillors that there's a lot of induction training just after you get elected, and sometimes you wish you could have it the following year as well. I think there is a case for those officers who could stand to think about it, doing some TED Talks for us so that we can always haul them off our computers when we've quite forgotten how it is that education gets funded. Because I'm afraid sometimes it's quite embarrassing when some of us ask questions we should know the answers to. And this does not just apply to children and young people members, because often a ward member will quite rightly come in because of an issue in their division, and they've clearly not understood how things get funded, like the pay of teachers or whatever. So I think that sort of thing where you can actually refer people when they see something coming up in an agenda, if we could have things like that in the can, be brilliant. I haven't got the right glasses on to tell exactly what your faces say, but I think I can't be the only one who really needs to revise this sort of thing. It's a brilliant plan, but the things that have already happened may have, need revision. Thank you very much.
We'll start putting on tests for you, Councillor Slatter. Rishenda, you wanted to
put in teachers.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that the member induction programme and the member training seminars are recorded and are available to members, so we can reshare that link if that would be helpful.
Thank you. I probably need a revision on how to get at those, but that's just my humiliation. Sorry.
So next up, we have committee appointments. A vacancy has arisen for a representative on the Cambridgeshire Culture Steering Group. This group meets 4 times a year, and details of the vacancy have been shared with CYP spokes and included on the published agenda. Councillor Atkins and Boulat already sit on this group. Thank you both. Are there any nominations for a 3rd representative today, or shall we take it away? Take that one away. Thank you. Do we have any other comments on committee appointments, or can we take them as noted? Noted. And finally, we are asked to note the local authority school governor nominations and appointments for the period January to March 2023. As always, I'd like to place on record the committee's gratitude for all of those who give their time to take on these vital roles. Any comments, questions, queries? Anyone who wants to become a governor? We've got sign-up forms at the back. In which case we'll take these appointments as noted. That brings us to the end of today's business. My thanks to all of the members of the committee for their time and attention given to each item on today's agenda, and to the members of public and local members who have joined us today to share their views. Our next meeting is on Tuesday the 27th of June here in the Red Kite room. I now declare this meeting closed.